Chapter 10. Sita. King Dandaka, filled with lust and arrogance, brutally rapes and defiles a Raja. To the king, anything that lives on his land is his possession. A Raja is only a child when she is raped. Dandaka destroys the innocence of this young girl and leaves her bleeding in the forest, laughing, his lust satiated. A Raja's father is a sage. Seeing what has happened to his daughter, the sage curses the king and his land. In 7 days, the story is said, the king and all his land burned and perished in the fury of a father's wrath. A Raja means without impurity. There are many Arajas in our land. There are even more Dandakas. But not all Arajas have fathers that avenge evil men. Sometimes the Dandakas win. Some mendicants prefer cities. Some prefer suburbs. I prefer the suburbs. Begging is a profession that generates revenue, and it includes all sorts of players. I have encountered affluent men and women who see begging as their day job and not as the desperation of survival. They arrive in autos and taxis, change into begging costumes, beg for a designated time, and head home with their loot. They pay protection money to strong men and sometimes the police, and in return their territories are protected. With experience, they have honed the art of appearance and ask that generate the most revenue. They see no qualms in soliciting from the middle-class man who is likely poorer than they are. Entire ecosystems have been created around the revenue that begging generates, including that very dark space of exploitation of children and the physically and mentally maimed. But not all beggars are charlatans, and poverty in India is very real. Desperation is real. Human hopelessness is real. Mental illnesses that lead to destitution are very real. But I see less of this in the suburbs, simply because the revenue stream is thinner and less predictable. A suburb is not the place for the ambitious beggar. I am not an ambitious beggar. For about 3 months now I have camped in a scrapyard on the edge of a small town. The last houses of this part of town taper off into a smattering of lazily constructed houses on a dirt lane. The scrapyard is across from the last house of this town, a small pale green and yellow tiled structure that has been built without love. The scrapyard has a lot of used tires and disused car parts, and jagged edges of metal screaming of tetanus. I have managed to clear a spot between a pile of tires and stretch a plastic tarp over the tire canopy. I usually sleep out in the open, so this is an upgrade. I can see myself staying here for a while. I have also found a hot spot not far from where I am camped. A little bazaar street with a church and a mosque with significant foot traffic. I have built a routine. Wake up, stare at the street, wander to the bazaar around lunch, eat, wander back to the scrapyard for a nap, wander back to the bazaar if I felt like it, or simply sit and watch children play in the open space between the scrapyard and the street, sleep and repeat. Time moves slowly here, but I am in no rush. She is about 9 years old. She lives in the last house on the street overlooking the scrapyard. I believe she goes to school during the day. Most evenings, usually after dark, she comes and sits on a stone block outside the scrapyard and plays by herself. She draws little squares on the sand and plays hopscotch. Sometimes she stays there late into the evening. Then her mother comes out of the house and calls, and she goes home. I have only seen her mother in the semi-dark, in the light of the lamp outside the house. She seems like a woman in her 30s. I see a lot of men come and go in the evenings. It is easy for me to surmise what her profession is.